Hey, this is the Kubeflow Notebooks meeting for the 6th of March 2025. Hopefully we'll be able to move quickly today. Shouldn't go too long, hopefully. Just as a structure overview, we'll just do some introductions to see if anyone new is here. We'll do a tracking update of what's important on Notebooks 1.0 and then just some things that have happened, and then 2.0, and then we'll do status updates and figure out what needs to happen this week to try and move Notebooks 2.0 towards release. So I guess first, is anyone new and hasn't contributed before, or just new to these meetings? Maybe they have contributed and wants to say hi. Feel free to jump on the mic. If not, or type in the chat. I think it's a couple of new names, but if you're shy, then that's fine too. Okay. So I just want to quickly on the recording give an update that we're almost finished with the 1.10 release, which is not 2.0. This is just 1.10 for dashboard, notebooks, and everything. That's been cut on the Kubeflow repo, but we do have an issue, which is that the Docker Hub is going to institute, effectively they're turning off unauthenticated pools, which is going to break a lot of people's clusters because we obviously have a lot of images, and so they would be subject to rate limits immediately, and so therefore unable to install Kubeflow. So we're going to migrate the images to GHCR, and then hopefully cut the 1.10 release on the GCR images. GHCR, sorry, GitHub. We probably will stop pushing to Docker because just, I mean, we can debate about that. If someone really wants us to continue pushing to Docker, with the exception, I think I will push the note, because these are user-facing images and people might not understand what's happening. I think I will continue to push these ones here for like the these ones, like for the what are these called? The notebook container images. Okay, no, example servers, and then. Okay, we've also started migrating code from Kubeflow to dashboard. We haven't done the code yet, but we have set up the dashboard repo. Hashad, yeah?
Just a question. You said 1.10 is getting cut off. What would happen to the issues which are like there's a tracking issue, right? Where you track all the issues which goes in 1.10. If there are issues which have not yet completed, do they just move to the next one, like
Yeah.
1.11?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay. Just
1.11 also, so it's kind of the versioning scheme. So what will mean is that any of those changes, if they involve the dashboard, which they probably don't, they probably involve notebooks, will end up on the dashboard repo. In fact, those issues have probably already been migrated. If there's pull requests, we will need to reopen them on the new repo. Again, the notebooks are the most complicated ones, so I don't think there'll be that much happening on the dashboard side, which includes, so for example, the dashboard repo will have the KFAM, admission webhooks for pod defaults, central dashboard, and profile controller.
right.
And also it will have the unreleased Angular rewrite, but I didn't put that here. And so what we're going to be doing is filtering the commits from the original repo.
Mhm.
And so only including the parts of the commits, so we'll have all the history so you can still see it, of the those components folders, like, so these
Right.
folders would be excluded. And then what will happen is it's just something that the KSC wanted to do to keep them out of that main repo. I don't know. But it does mean that we can then now release these versions independently of notebooks, which is good, I guess. But
Yeah.
and keep it more contained, I guess. And these
Got it.
components are kind of like platform components as well. They're not really a tool, unlike every other part of Kubeflow. So there is some discussion as to what that means as well for the project. But, yes. Okay. I won't address some of the other discussions that are going on around Helm charts because, like, it doesn't. We'll talk about that later. We won't talk about it in this meeting. We as a Kubeflow Notebooks working group can discuss whether it makes sense to try and make a standalone version of our project. I don't think it does, specifically these notebooks apps, because they require auth and platform, and like they require these kind of profiles and other components to even make any sense. Like, why would you use a notebooks app that you don't have access control for? That just doesn't make any sense, right? You just submit a pod and run it on the cluster if you don't care about access control, right? So, like, that's my thought there. So we're the only app which really does not make sense. I mean, pipelines doesn't really as well, but I think there are more people who are using pipelines outside of Auth. But um, anyway, that's just something, and so that's why I'm not sure that we'll ever have an independent Helm chart for the notebooks stuff because it just wouldn't be useful outside of the context of a platform. Anyway, cool. So if you've any more comments about that, okay. So let's one last thing. Yeah, so we're going to be migrating that code. So what we will, I don't have a whole lot of time right now, but obviously this doesn't need to strictly happen until 1.11. But I will hopefully do it before then, obviously way before. That we would once we migrate the code and remove it from kubeflow/kubeflow, we will need. We're not migrating the GitHub workflows because they won't really work on the new repo. We will need to we're going to copy and paste them and update them such that they do work and can release. So we might consider. The problem is we won't have all these old release branches on the new repo, so we will only find out what's not working once we cut the 1.11 release. Anyway, but so that's probably fine. Okay, and so anyone who's wants to help with that, I mean, that would be great. But if no one can, then that's fine too. We'll move on. If anyone wants to message me privately on the Slack if you want to help with that. We're going to do the move ourselves, but for the GitHub workflows. Okay, Notebooks 2.0 important updates. I haven't got anything specifically under here other than the fact that I know that we merged the Swagger UI path on the dashboard, which isn't fully populated yet, but it tries to automate as much of the generation as possible, which is going to be useful for users. So we do now have on the Notebooks 2.0 branch under the backend a Swagger spec for everything, which is great. But it doesn't have all the paths. It only has some of them right now. Okay. Tracking. So these are we won't go through these, but I just wanted to say that we're now tracking them up here in these kind of sections up here. So overall, I still think the overall most important thing we need to get fixed is the backend and controller development locally so that people can more easily iterate locally. I think there is a PR for that on the notebooks repo. Yeah, okay. So if anyone has any PRs that they've raised or they haven't, okay, cool. Okay, so let's just now go through what people are working on and what we need to do. So work streams is kind of what we did last time, which is we kind of highlighted the ones we think are really important. And then that we're trying to kind of do PRs and steps that are required to get to that thing. So better local development, there is a pull request. I'm not sure if anyone's had a chance to play around with this yet. This person's work. Is this person in the meeting? Do you want to explain what you did?
Hello. Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, I just did set up the tilt dev environment. I put the tilt in the tilt file, the function to use customize with the existing manifest. It does the hot swap of the Go binary inside the Docker image, so it's quite fast when you do to do live updates while you are coding in the controller sub-project. And I did just test it locally on my machine, so I'm not sure if it's working on ARM.
Okay, so I've
So
got a
if you
question
want,
about Cert Manager. What happens if the user already has Cert Manager installed on the cluster?
you can just comment out in the tilt config JSON file the cert manager services.
Is there any way we can try and automate that if the CRD is already there or something?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah,
I can try
because
to.
the problem is people will often accidentally run these on production clusters. I've broken production clusters before trying to run, development stuff,
Yeah.
especially around because also Istio is going to need to be there once we do once we actually have it working properly. So that's even worse if someone tries
Yeah.
to install Istio. There's also a problem of this is going to be on the cluster forever now, right? It's never going to uninstall. So part of me
No, for now, yeah.
wonders if we should just not try and do this automatically and instead have a development guide. Or actually, that's the most important thing you need to add. Actually, I just realized. Do you have a development guide? Oh, you do.
Yeah, it's quite
Folder.
simple for now.
Dev and is that at the root of the repo?
Yeah,
That's
it is.
okay. I think it shouldn't be at the. I think it should. I think it should be under here, like workspaces.
Oh, all right. So you
Because
think
there's going to be other
it's-
apps in here in the future.
Okay. So one for each project?
No, well,
So
I don't know how to structure it in that sense because they do all need to be deployed together, right? But at least workspaces, we could have it at the root of this repo, this folder.
Okay, yeah.
Because these three
Makes
need to be
sense.
together. Because in the future, we'll also have notebooks and, well, we won't have notebooks ever in the same branch, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see, because there will be two branches for V1 and V2, and at some point, though, actually, I take that back. There will maybe be stuff like the volumes app might at some point coexist or not. But probably there's just going to be two lines of branches in this repo, which is going to be a little bit confusing for users, but developers, sorry. Anyway, so if we could have like we can either have a folder called development, or we could do like what you're saying, you know, with here, or we could, I don't know. In any case, what I would suggest is that we have a contributing guide or something, and then that's just, anyway, we'll talk about this more there, but that's kind of my vibe there. Like, I just want to try and get this part done as soon as possible so that the goal would be just a basic guide which says, I have an empty or production cluster, like, I don't really care how it is. I'm just trying to run these development versions of the app. So like the first step would be like, in the future, it would be like scale down the official versions that you've deployed. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then run these backends and whatever. But obviously we don't have official versions yet. But in the short term, just be like, install Cert Manager with this command. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I think.
Yeah. It was more tailored about creating a cluster and test here, but yeah, I have to
because people
consider
will want to test it on their
also-
existing clusters, is what I'm thinking. Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
cool. Because that's what's beneficial about Tilt as well. It works on non-kind.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you don't need to build images and push them to a registry. You know, it's great. Cool. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to go through that one because I think this is like what you're doing here is the most important one. So good job. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks.
So, don't worry about this part yet. So, the other one that we were doing was get list table. So I think Paulo, Andy? Hey, Andy.
Hey, sorry, I was a little late. So I know that Al had just said something about, didn't test on ARM. Do you have an opinion on what we would want? Like, I'm happy to test on my machine, but then would that just be like a section? By the way, if you're running on ARM, here's a bunch of other stuff that you can tweak. Like, do we even want to care about that? Like, how
It
much
will work. I would be shocked if it didn't work.
Well, just like certain random crap like make versus gmake, like there's a bunch of like annoying glue there potentially.
It should be fine. It should be fine. Like, I'd be surprised. Like, the only thing that we might want to do again is this developer guide is a dependencies section. And that is hard, right? So almost certainly one of the first ones is update your bash if you're on a MacBook, because Mac has ridiculously old bash because of GNU reasons. Like, that's always a problem. And so, so like that should be fine. I think we should be good there. Go is cross-compiled by ARM usually almost perfectly, so it's fine. The only stuff which doesn't work with ARM perfectly will be the notebook images themselves, but we already cross-compile most of them, so it's fine. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think it'll be an issue, and we'll find out pretty quickly. It's a development guide. Thanks for your comment, though. Okay. Yeah, so I'll comment on your pull request with some of the specific things I would want to see. But okay, so Paulo, I think this is your kind of line of work, right?
Yes. Hello.
Awesome. So sorry about not reviewing these PRs last week, but is the first one in this chain of pull requests ready for review, or do you need to make a new one?
No, I think this is the first one we need to review. The others depend on this. There was some commits after Eder's review, so I think it should be ready for another round of review.
What happened here? This is weird. Wait, has this been not rebased onto the new one? Maybe that's why.
Could be.
Because like this should have approved itself. That's strange. It has okay to test. Okay. I mean, I'll click it for now, but but we should rebase, I think, probably.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because because also the tests may not run. Anyway, whatever. So is this one ready for prime time? Probably.
Yeah, I think this could be reviewed. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if is this your progress? It's actually not, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay, this person
Yehudit here.
not here today. Anyway, okay. So if that's ready, then we'll just I'll do a quick check of that, and then now this part, is this one ready, or does this one need a new?
The others below depends on the first one to be merged, to be rebased and updated.
Yes.
Because of the camel case. The services.
Oh yeah, this one needs to be rebased. Okay, yeah. Yes. Okay. And these actually are different as well. Oh, no, we need to split this one out. So this one actually needs to be split up because this part's being done in the other PR now.
Okay, I'll talk to Yehudit.
Yeah, I mean, so what I might do is I'll just review this one and I'll just try and get this merged. Like if anything, I'll just try and get this merged immediately. Just like I'll push changes to this branch and just I'll get it fixed. If there's anything that needs to be done, I'll rebase it even. It's fine. But like this one needs to be rebased on that one, which means removing this stuff. And then the main goal of this one is the front end, you know.
Okay, sure.
And that's great. And then once we've got that, then we'll have the back end for the get. And then after that, we can now do the details view, which is the one that you are working on. So how does this, what's your thinking about this?
Yeah, I updated this one this morning. So I put 3 images there. They are updated on the description.
Amazing.
To illustrate when no workspaces are selected, when one workspace is selected, and when multiple workspaces are selected. And
Great.
you can see the table doesn't jump now. It keeps the same width below the drawer on the right. So unless there is anything else you would.
That's great. And this is better than
there's the,
yeah. So that means we'll have this merged in and people can start adding things to it, I guess. But
yes.
And do we in terms of testing on this, what do we do testing in this or not really? What does testing mean for you?
Yeah, we do have some Cypress tests for some screens, but this PR doesn't have any tests yet, but I can add.
I don't need you to add tests unless there's a reason, but like maybe even like a scaffold for where you would put a test or something. I don't know what would you think would be necessary to test here?
Yeah, we could test if when there is one selected, if the correct drawer is showing up.
That's probably a minimum. Yeah,
elements.
I like that. Like that just yeah, that seems reasonable. You know, like some kind of like very minimal, like what is the most conceptually, like what would be the most unacceptable breakage possible, I guess, right? Like if I select a row and nothing happens kind of thing, and then I unselect the row and something doesn't go away or something, I don't know. But yeah, okay. But then also I don't want to tie too much to any UI elements because especially their locations or anything. I assume you're tagging them with IDs for tests, but like my concern is we're going to move things around probably, right? So that's why I don't necessarily want to tie to like UI tests, but workflow tests, even workflow tests, I'm a little bit, like the step, because that just may not be what it is in the future. But then we need to remember to come back and add them. That's my only concern. So I'm willing to defer to your opinion here on what you think is the best.
Usually we search for test IDs on the elements, so it doesn't regard about position, just the ID as a metadata, not a text on the screen or anything like that. So we can change the labels and move stuff around, and the test won't break. It would basically just verify that the correct drawer is showing up when in each of those 3 situations, right? When no one selected, the one selected, and multiple are selected.
Cool. Awesome. So I guess what we'll do is as soon as I can, I'll get this one in, and then you can, or you don't, someone else has to rebase that one, I guess.
Yes.
And then I could also do it, but I mean, unless I don't have time really. So, but
as soon as it's measured, as soon as the first one's measured, I can talk to Yehudit and ask her for a rebase.
And then the other like slightly longer term one that was talking about, we need to have a create workspace thing, which needs a new backend, which I think this is the front end call. So yeah, this is create. Sorry, no, we actually already have that create API, so that should be fine. The update
Yes.
is the more complicated one that we need a new backend for, which you need to think about. Okay. In terms of other things that might be super important, and then we'll go through everyone's kind of what they've been working on. Is there any other ones that like work streams that are like critical to unblock future development? Obviously, like I think maybe getting a workspace kind viewer initial page might also be something critical. Like,
yeah, Liav told he couldn't join today, but he told me he worked on a mockup, so he will probably send on Slack for us to take a look.
That'd be amazing.
Later.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because just getting that page in once we kind of have it probably will help multiple development happen on top of it, I guess. We also don't have
absolutely.
the back end for it yet, I don't think. We do have a workspace list and get, so maybe that's enough. Workspace kind list and get, but I'm not sure. There's also controller work around virtual service reconciliation, but I'm sure if any one of these people is here, we'll end up hitting them on the stand-up part. Okay. Okay, and so other than that, so again, priorities in my mind are still, let's get the tilt thing done. We need to obviously comment about what that is for you to do. We need to, I want to get the main workspace table listing thing done, and then we can have more debates around designs and work and things like that later. I really want to try and get the create workspace done over the next couple of weeks as well. Like not done, but just like in and working in a flow sense. Again, these would be hard to test without this top one. So that's why that's top one is important. And then obviously once Eder is back next week, he'll probably be able to start on the update one. And then the UI will obviously need a UI update for the update flow, which will be different to the create flow as well. Also, when anyone's developing these, if they see something and they know how, like they understand what's happening in the flow, like, and it doesn't seem right from a user perspective, please raise it. It's not like anything is prescriptive here. You know, if you think, man, that button wouldn't makes more sense to be somewhere else, or that, you know, when you're creating a volume, you know, like you nothing's gospel. Cool. Okay. Anyone got anything else? And then we'll move to the stand-up part of this. If not, cool. Okay. Let's go through. So what I did was I got the Swagger thing merged. I just worked with the person who raised that PR. Thank you to that person. It was very cool. So now we do have the Swagger one, and they're going to be working on adding the other API paths, and it's automatically generated, so it should be fine. Okay. Eder is away. Swagger backend API review and merge, and then Eder, I don't know exactly what he was working on. Polo, you're working on.
Yeah, I had a few holidays this week, so I didn't progress as much as I wanted, but I'm working on the creation UI, and I rebased the selectable workspaces that we just commented.
Awesome.
So I expect to open a PR until next week for the creation UI.
Amazing. I'm super excited to see how we handle, like, I'm assuming you've followed the kind of design of the like selectors on the side, you know, kind of like the Amazon kind of cart kind of label selector view. Is that kind of what you've done?
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect.
A lot of checkboxes based on the label values available in the.
Is there any do you think about having any other kind of thing than a checkbox, like, you know, a multi-value option or something like that? Because, you know, the labels have values, right?
Yeah, what I did was to separate the checkboxes by categories while each category is the label key.
Yep.
And for each label key, all the values available for all the things that we're listing. So if we're listing workspace kinds in the cards viewer on the middle of the screen, we would have all the values that that label assumes for all the workspace kinds.
Do you think of having a type or something like that would make any sense? Or I guess that's hard because labels are kind of implicitly defined at the option. You know what I mean? So like by having a label in the option is where we learn about the existence of a label. So like it would be hard to make like a number one which had a slider or something. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, that would be.
But that might be useful. like, would that be useful? I feel like versions, I think there is something to be said about the UI way of ordering a semantic version is not the alphabetic ordering. You know what I mean? And so we might need to think of a way to indicate that a particular label has a particular type, but that can't be in the option, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it would be a specific label key would have a different type of UI, right?
Yeah, and then that causes some. Yeah,
I
like
mean,
I don't know.
we could have
Yeah.
that in the future. I would probably add that later after we have the
Is the
first
API?
version.
Oh, you probably haven't seen it, but like the workspace kind label structure. You know, this right here. I'm just thinking the reason I'm just bringing it up is because this might need to change, and anytime an API change, it should happen as early as possible. Like the labels are just key and value right now, string.
Yeah, I think for the response of the backend as a service, the BFF, sorry, the labels are like the key is the key itself in the JSON response. The key is not a property. The key is the real property, and then the value is the value of that key. You know, just one line there. By conversion, dot 3.11.
It's just my concern is that this, when it gets in the workspace kind, it's like it's a string. You know what I mean? And like, and that means that this will have to be. You can't have like or types in CIDs. You know what I mean? This has to be a string or something else. And so like, if you'd have to have like str value or something. You know, like if we ever wanted to. But but YAML really. It's probably fine to be a string, I guess. And I guess we could have. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe it should be. It's really dirty, but maybe it should just be like a value formatter or something. And then I don't know what to do when you have incompatible formats though across two values that are of the same key. Like say you call this one a version because it's a version, but then someone forgets to label it on the next one and it's just a plain string, you know?
Yeah, then we gotta trust.
I think it's probably fine if it's just always a key and a value string. I think, and then we can work on formatters up here maybe in the spawner section. Maybe, yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Anything else you're working on?
No, that's it for now. The selectable roles we already talked about.
Awesome. Jenny?
Hello. So yeah, just kind of, so Paulo has been working on the workspace creation UI and he showed us the designs last week and they look really, really awesome. So it's exciting to see how that's gonna look. And yeah, looking forward to seeing the PR for that. And yeah, I'm happy to review that one as well when it goes out. Otherwise, yeah, I'll be focusing on the MUI theming of that workspace creation wizard once that code is merged. And happy to continue to look at PRs for front-end components and anything related to Patternfly implementation as well.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. So yeah, if you have, so you're not working on mockups or anything. Is that you're more of just do you want to work on mockups for stuff or help review them at least? Maybe, I don't know. Oh, muted.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in wherever I'm needed and yeah, help consult with like anything related to Patternfly work. Yeah, happy to do it if there's anywhere I'm needed. Totally.
Yeah, because I think so. Again, whoever has the mockups, whenever you're making mockups, post them in the Slack thread, Kubeflow-notebooks. Not you, just anyone, you know. And then we can all review. Hopefully, tag maybe me and anyone else who you know has. And me and Ed are definitely, but then anyone else as well that you know would be wanting to review, and anyone else can just look at it. Also, just as a side note, I forgot to say earlier, we will have an insane amount of people looking at everything we're doing at the moment because of GSOC. They won't be external people, they're students mostly, but so you might see some weird comments from people who really have never used Kubeflow, don't know what's going on, and they'll be like, oh, I'd want to contribute, and maybe what they write looks like it's written by ChatGPT or something. But so that just might happen. Just, yeah, so not everyone you see is a user at the moment. There'll be some student people. Cool.
That call out, I wanted to ask, so it sounds like we're pushing to like do all of those kinds of reviews and like mocks and like demo stuff in that Slack channel. Does it just make it easier to sort of have everything in one place that way everyone can look at it rather than sort of like presenting a demo at like
Well,
a
if there's
specific.
a specific demo, absolutely, that can happen in these meetings as well. But just because things don't necessarily happen on the week cadence as well, it just lets people take a look on their own time. And there is something to be said because like GitHub might also work. And if we get a lot of discussion, maybe we should move it to an issue. But Slack is more real time, you know, people can be, although there is something to be said that like annotating can be a good way to review things, and that can be hard on Slack. So that was even harder on GitHub. So yeah, I don't know. It's a hard, like we don't really have a mock-up system that we're using, do we? Like what do we have? What are we actually creating these mock-ups in?
So I think we were using Miro to make those mockups, which has been effective for like the design and like the pattern flag components that we've been using. I guess, yeah, my question is like if this is like an appropriate platform to like present that progress in to get feedback, or if it's more of like a standard and convention to like do that in the Slack channel. I think it would be like great to like have this like here to like show everybody the progress and like get feedback like in the meeting. But yeah, I'm not sure
Yeah,
if like
definitely.
there's
But I
a
think we
different way.
should post it before the meeting if you can, so people can take a look. But yeah,
Oh, that's a
yeah,
great
yeah.
idea. Put in the channel, say like we're planning to demo this, and then bring it to the meeting too. Does that
Yeah,
sound
yeah.
like?
Yeah, perfect. Any demos, and there is something to be said though. We don't want to confuse users. Like we're not committing to particular views or features yet in the UI. So I don't want to take it to like the community meeting. This meeting's fine, but I don't want to freak. I don't want to depend on. I don't want to have you know, us change a design and then people say, "Oh, I liked that previous design," or something. Right?
Yeah.
Once we get a bit more developed, I mean.
That makes sense. So this is a good meeting for that, to show progress, and the community meetings are for just like for the stuff that actually gets implemented. Okay, that makes sense.
So I want to give the opportunity to everyone to present at the official meetings once we've got an actual end-to-end alpha version. It's like once we have something that works end-to-end, we can definitely rotate through some of the people and give everyone a chance to present in front of the community. Because I want to do it not every week, maybe, but every couple of weeks, and kind of give not necessarily a status update, but to the people who worked on things to say, hey, we made this feature. And then users can then get excited about it, because obviously the goal of this project is to become the standard notebooks tool for Kubernetes. And so long term, there's other features we're going to need to implement to make that happen. But this is the goal of Kubeflow overall, to make the best AI tools for Kubernetes, so, and derived platforms like OpenShift. So the more people who, once we've got it end to end in some form, see it, will be thinking, oh, that would be great for my company or something like that. So yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Anything else? So you said MUI theming. Is that different?
Oh yeah. That's just related to Paolo's workspace creation work. So once that goes in, then I'll work on theming those components.
Okay, cool. And so I don't know who else is here right now. So I'll just, people have put their things in, I'll just go with them first. So Akram.
Hi everyone.
Hi. So what have you worked on this week?
I've updated the workspace YAML as Paolo and Ida. And now I'm waiting for the review.
Okay, yeah. So that, I mean, yeah, this, yeah, I mean, yeah, that is, yeah, I'm sure this will be fine. I think Ida reviewed a little bit. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, this obviously doesn't block anything right now. So especially until the front end has the details view page. So that's great to just wait for that for review. Do you have a specific? Have you got a task, or is this saying that you want a task?
Yes, for now I don't have any task.
Do you have time to work on something in the next week, or?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess you could take a look at we don't really have a design for it, but maybe you could propose a design for how to do updating. You know how we have a create API right now? So maybe start a discussion. I think there is actually an issue. So I'd say this is a backend task around how we can do the updates. Because we have a create API, but obviously you can't use the create API to do an update. There's a question around if the whole update payload needs to be pushed at the same time. But if there's not an issue already, I'm just checking if there is. Don't think there is. Let's make an, like, if you propose kind of an API, then we can just have a quick discussion. If the front end people would be happy with that, then you can implement it as a backend PR. Is that something you want to do?
Yes. Okay.
Perfect. I think let's check if we had a discussion here. Yeah, create update method. Yeah, we have. So yeah, we need to create an update one. Yeah. Okay, cool. So if you want to take a look at that, I'm not saying you have to make it in the next week, but just, you know, propose the structure of the API. You can do it in a pull request if you want, but I think it's probably easier to do it in just an issue first, about how you would think it. So my perspective is that we've probably, there's two options. The first is we use some kind of update ID like a like the Kubernetes API does, but I don't think it's necessary. I think we can just have a race condition between the two. I think it's not a big problem. The goal of the payload would be to mutate anything that's mutable within the so effectively just take a look at what's in the create payload and look at the things that can be mutated, which is everything for now, and allow and create a new patch, or is it put? Is it put is for create, and then patch is for
updating some fields, and I think this is what the front end team want.
Yes, but like let's just assume that the front end is going to provide you all the fields that you need at the same time. So it's kind of like because I'm talking about HTTP methods. Like there isn't an update HTTP method, I don't think. So maybe it is just put. Anyway, the point is whatever the right one is, I'm sure you can just propose it. That's what I'm saying. I forget the actual, my brain gets confused between the Kubernetes ones and the other ones. So like, let's say here, we'll raise an issue on notebooks repo with proposal of structure for update workspace API. And then obviously if we all just say, yeah, that looks reasonable, chuck it in this in the Slack, and then we can say if it looks reasonable, then you can make a PR in the same week if we end up being happy. Expect that the front end will send the entire payload rather than a batch payload. Yeah. Okay. Create API existing for fields. Okay, awesome. Hamid, you added your thing here?
Yes, hello everyone. So for me, I've started working on adding the other endpoints to Swagger.
Awesome. So I'm just saying what you did is you added in the initial Swagger API to backend. Awesome. And if you're raising new ones for the other APIs, that's amazing. Thank you for that work. Awesome. Continue. Is there anything else you want to say that you're doing?
No, that's it for now.
Cool. Awesome. Hashad.
Yeah, from my side, I need to prioritize my work a little bit. So right now, I haven't really get into it. Just going through the code and working through the status updates of init container and other containers which are there. So I'm still working on it.
Is this in the controller? Yeah, in the controller.
Yeah, controller, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, these things don't need to happen immediately, just as you get time. That's great. It's open source. Everyone's doing this out of the goodness of their heart or the goodness of their company's heart. So yeah. Let's so if there's any help you need there, that's maybe asking questions on the Slack. I'm really pushing people towards the Slack as I'm stuck on something. So if people get stuck on something, either because they're blocked by someone else or they just need an opinion, and hopefully want a quick response, it's likely that someone will be able to answer your question. So if everyone's regularly kind of checking on the Slack, and you can feel free to tag me and everything if you really want, and I'll tag other people if no one responds. Anyone, not just you, just like don't sit blocked by things or having questions. If someone could just answer it quickly, both in terms of, oh, should we do it this way or this way? If it turns out to be a bigger discussion, then we can bring it here or to the issues. But it's about moving quickly. Cool. Okay, who else is in the meeting who who wants to say something that they've been working on or needs new tasks? Otherwise, I'll just kind of go through everyone in the meeting who hasn't talked. Also, we add we didn't actually have a task. We didn't have a entry for LL. So you were the one working on yeah, yeah, you can talk, of course.
Yeah, it's Alessio here in the list. So I'm
Oh, sorry.
yeah. This week I didn't really work on anything, but I will. If you give me feedback on the pull request, I can work on what we said here in the code.
So that's perfect. Yes, that's what we need to make sure we remember to do, which is PR is a PR for tilt div is raised, and I'll just link it. That decides to load tilt. That one. Is this one or is this something else?
Yeah, this is
okay. Cool.
This one.
Probably should. It's not just a guide, I guess. Okay. Then so like we'll work on updates after review by Matthew. Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it this week, obviously, but I mean, preferably as soon as possible. But if not, then that's fine too. Okay. Anyone else? I'm just going to list out people. Andy, are you?
Yeah, I'm not working on anything right now. I actually just got back from holiday. I did hit you up on Slack, Matthew, if you want to.
Okay.
I'm happy to start to look at the GitHub Action stuff. I probably have like a week's worth of like company work to do, but I should be freeing up to like really tackle the action stuff if that works on your timeline, and then continue just to like start to dive into the controller base so I can start to take some back end work, but not ready to volunteer there yet, as I want to just get some groundwork laid.
Yeah, so those actions are actually on not the notebooks repo. Ironically, they're actually on the dashboard repo.
Or I'm sorry, yeah, Kubeflow dashboard. Yes, that was just a misspeak on my part. Yes, but I'm happy to help with that because that I can I have a lot of experience doing that. So I'm happy to dive in there.
Yeah. I mean, because we'll move the code. I'll push the commits at some point soon, which someone else created to filter them down, and I'll push them onto that branch, and then we'll yeah, okay. So then we'll need to think about. It's really painful if you haven't worked on that code base before, but we'll need to move the existing workflows. They should just work, but they might not. And so,
story of my life. So now I'm happy to at least like debug, and I can take it to Slack as things happen. So if you just want to like hit me up when you think I'm ready to start doing stuff and seeing what breaks, that's easy enough conceptually that I can kind of do that whenever you say it's ready.
Yeah, okay, saying this week probably, I mean, it might happen, who knows, but I'll try and move the code maybe this week, but I don't know if I will do that even because we need to update the GHCR push as well. But on the original repo, we've kind of got, it's a big split mess at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, if this drags a couple days, that's better for me to kind of like close up some stuff that I need to get done anyway. So just keep me in the loop, and once you're ready, hopefully I'm totally free, and then we're off and running.
We'll need to migrate the GHA and release process. I guess, yeah, and I'm thinking we probably will need to test it on like a fork of the repo and things like that.
Yep, totally cool.
Yeah, we should do like a fake release on a fork of the repo is probably what we should do. Yeah, okay. There's also some discussion around where we should push the images, just for everyone to be aware. Like, we already have some. Anyway, I won't go through that now. Okay, cool. Waiting for Matthew to move the code and discuss specific tests. Specific like MVP, like not MVP, like outcomes, I guess. For the new repo. And that's great if we have more people contributing, because it'll encourage, even if it's just in the CI/CD, it'll help people see that there's more than just me on that one. Okay, awesome. Anyone else? Okay, Christian?
Sorry, I'm just here getting some information, just lurking kind of, I'm helping with Jenny and Eder on the model registry and just getting up to speed with the kind of what's going on with notebooks.
That's cool. Welcome. Anyone else we've missed? I know Josh is probably not here to contribute code. He just likes to listen as well. He can say hi if he wants. Or if he's busy, that's fine too.
Hey, this is, look, I just want to say I appreciate everybody contributing in, and Matthew, especially appreciate your work here. You know, the notebooks team is so critical as a first place for people to come in to the community. And I think this upgrade and the excitement around it is really going to be a big boost. So, you know, all the work that you guys are doing beyond just delivering the code is that you're delivering a process and you're helping the community build best practice. And that's something I hope you're proud of and I appreciate.
Thank you, Josh. For people who don't know, he's a former KSC member and doing lots of things for a long time in the Kubeflow community. So it's always good to have Josh's support on things. Awesome. Anyone I've missed? Or who just wants to say something in the last 5 minutes? Feel free. Anyone want to make any suggestions for how we can do things better? Awesome. Okay, I will, I don't think there's, I will just highlight this as an interesting discussion that someone raised with me. Just, it's really very technical and specific to PyTorch, but there's a concept called like number of threads in PyTorch itself. And there is a kind of an interesting question that someone asked me, which is, if I've set a limit on a notebook container or any container that has a PyTorch job running in it, like a CPU limit, what should the number of threads be on the thing? Because the issue is that a container sees the entire host's CPU. It doesn't see a fractional portion of the CPU. So the default PyTorch behavior to look at the number of cores in the CPU would actually cause it to exceed its limit and be rate limited excessively here. But yet there isn't an obvious way to translate between, like, so my recommendation is usually don't put limits on notebooks requests, only put requests on them, so that the way that requests are enforced on Kubernetes is that they are, they're effectively a proportionate allocation between the pods on the containers on the node. So like if there's a request for 5 CPU and one for 1 CPU, then if there's ever resource contention, meaning there's more need for CPU than the processes in those containers are using more CPU than there is on the host, they will be proportionately allocated milliseconds on the threads based on their relative requests. But limits are, you get hard rate limited even if the CPU is not busy. And so if PyTorch thinks that it has 10 threads, like 16 cores or whatever, or maybe more, it might try and spawn up to that many threads. I was just interested, like, one of the ways that I think we might be able to address this just specifically for PyTorch is that for the rare case that someone really wants to have a limit on their on one of these pod options, I think, and this opens up a whole discussion around other things, but if we look at extra env, which is one of our workspace kind templates for under the pod for the pod template, we could have, in the same way that we have HTTP path prefix, we could have one which is a function that tries to impute a valid value for that PyTorch max threads based off your requests. for limit, like your limits of the option selected. And I just wanted to say that might be an interesting thing. Like, so, for example, if there was a, not this limit, but if there was a limit for CPU here, we could impute, or even a request. I don't know. We could even look at the node, right? There's so many things that kind of come into this. I just wanted to highlight it as an interesting optimization for actual end users. But
was this issue somehow, like, how did it come up to you? Like, how
someone
did
just messaged me and was like, okay, so how many, they said, what number of threads should I do when I'm initializing PyTorch on a container, right? And then I looked it up and it turned out there is an environment variable that you can use to set it as well. And this is, so there's like an internal Python, like set threads or something. I mean, we won't search it now, but so that's just interesting. But I'm just thinking this opens up a lot of other possible places where special environment variable things based off what we know about the container might be useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were a few like certificates ones, right? Like we know each package holds its certification differently. So those could be some environment variables also. So that's how we know. This is something interesting with this I never saw before.
Because effectively CPU requests and limits are not defined as integers. They're defined as random things which may or may not be integers. So they need to actually be converted back to an integer. But then I don't know if it makes sense or not. But maybe this opens up the reasoning. There's another thing that also, thinking about it, maybe we should be allowed to set environment variables under pod configs. That might just solve the problem as well. That's actually probably that's probably a more sensible way to solve the problem.
So this environment variable would be something which will go into workspaces, right? Instead of workspace kind?
No. So, well, you can already set environment. No, I don't think you can set environment variables in workspace kind. No, you can't. But I think really thinking about it, probably just adding environment variables under the spec is probably the logical thing to do, thinking about it. And they would take priority over the ones defined up here. Extra M, wherever they are, somewhere. Extra M, there it is. So they would take, that's probably the easiest way, because then the admin can figure out what the heck is necessary in that case. And we could maybe even do the same thing under pod config, image configs as well. So in the case that you, for some reason, want to set an environment variable only when the user selects that image. Yeah.
So wouldn't there be a requirement for a user to add their own environment variables to their own pods? To their own workbenches or notebooks, whatever they're using?
I'm not sure that that's really, I mean, when would that be necessary? By the way, everyone's feel free to go, by the way. We're over the time now, but we'll keep recording just so that people can watch what we say, but we'll try and finish in 5 minutes.
So if we take this example itself, people are spinning up, two different people are spinning up their own PyTorch environments. Someone has used a big CPU, someone has used a small CPU. Maybe they just want to use a different environment variables to trigger this. Let's say we take care of this particular example from notebook controller and we add it to workspace kind and we somehow solve it. But what about, let's say I want to use a environment variable to set up just curl to a different PyPI index, right? Or pip install from a different PyPI index. Where would I set up that if I'm a user? If I'm not a cluster admin?
But then you can just do that within your own workflow. You know what I mean? Like if you're in the notebook already. This is about setting defaults for everyone.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe if this is on the workspace side, then if an individual wants it, they can set it on their individual workspaces as well, right? Instead of going into the notebook and then doing stuff, they can do it from the dashboard. That was my thought process behind this.
I just don't know if we should let people set environment variables because they can break things with them. Like admins probably most of the time aren't going to want that. And if someone is able to do that, then maybe they should have the ability to edit the workspace kind itself. But then I know that you're saying I want it per workspace. And maybe, because we have these pod defaults, which obviously people can use based off label selectors, but maybe having like the pod defaults be like not pod defaults, but something like this be like we did talk about this idea of like, but the problem is that means that constructing a workspace requires more than the workspace kind. You know, like to actually, you'd have to use a combination of two resources, which is a bit of a mess in terms of the controller. It's not a big deal, but I have yet to see. I don't know of any. Sorry, Andy, go.
Finish your thought, please.
I've yet to see any use case that is necessary for the user to set a specific environment variable that they couldn't also achieve by just. It leaves the possibility of them breaking something. Is what I'm saying.
One other example could be AWS or any of the Ceph credentials. People put that through environment variables, calling AWS secret key, AWS access key. That is something.
But that wouldn't be per workspace. Wouldn't that be more like per namespace even? Like
depends on the user, right? Like how much access they have. If they have one namespace, they can use it. If they just want for their own just one single book bench, then it is per workspace, right?
So I've seen other notebook derivation systems like what we have that are usually derived from notebooks that allow users to add credentials as a concept of a mount, kind of like we have volumes as a concept as a mount.
Yeah.
Obviously you could add volumes. Well, they have to be in this concept they have to be PVC, but in the future we could extend this to be more than.
Yeah, there are secret config maps. Yes, absolutely.
But.
And that's what I was thinking. Like, where would they select, or how would they add this? Because I'm just comparing what V1 to V2. In V1, technically you just do it on the pod spec itself. You write your, you can just put environment variables with AWS access key X, AWS access key.
You can't
Y.
do that through the UI, but you can do that.
You can't do it with UI, but yeah, you can do it from the pod spec, like the notebook spec CR, right? But if you go to the backend of V2, where would you do that? Is what I was just trying to think.
Yeah, you'd have to use pod defaults and add the labels, or you would have to, which would inject it with a mutating webhook, which isn't great, or you would have to be an admin, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll just write this down so I don't forget. Is that
yeah, I'm also thinking, how did we miss this?
To allow extra env within a specific pod config and image config, so the admin can set envs that only make sense for those specific options. You can imagine many use cases that this would be necessary. So I think this is almost certainly a feature that we need to have.
Yeah, like I also know, like we could say user can do it inside their notebook, but I know like a lot of people, what they do is they want it on the pod itself, so that they don't have to replicate it in each file or each notebook that they're writing in that Jupyter lab. So that's one thing which I notice.
In fact, it's so obvious that this is how it should be, is that I'm just going to say that we should allow that's the obvious answer to this problem. So
yeah, maybe you should just add something like volume envars.
So yeah, like this is, I've seen, anyway, Andy, you had a thought. Go.
Well, I was just kind of curious on this, right? So I'm still like, I agree with all that's being said, but you still run into this default case. Is it just like a README thing of, yes, we've now exposed this environment variable, you can control this, but it still is like an opt-in paradigm, right? So if you don't explicitly set this value, it's going to default to kind of the old school, you know, I mean, this used to be like Java heap size back in the day in Kubernetes, right? Where like, if you don't set it, then it's going to go back to, I'm just going to grab everything there. And is that, you know, where your earlier thing, you were saying like, you know, you could have a webhook that does that. It's not great, but it's something. Do we still want to do that for that default case? Or we just document this as, if you don't set this env, then this is the default behavior. You know what I mean? And you could obviously like advance into that, but I guess I just wasn't clear what the thought was there.
So this is only for PyTorch, like only affects PyTorch, right? So what it will be is users will learn about this environment variable by looking at the default workspace kind that we create for Jupyter PyTorch, probably, right? Other cases, you can imagine so many cases like with Spark or other things, because it's more like it's saying that for a specific pod option, like a pod config or image config, you might want to set a specific environment variable as the admin for some reason different to all the others. If you want to set them for all of the workspaces of that kind, you can set it as a default one at the root level, but you can also set an override or something else here as well. And I can just think of so many use cases for that.
Well, again, I'm just thinking as a user experience, like, yes, it's great that we can configure this, but if you don't know that you can configure this for this PyTorch use case, do we like care? Like, you don't know until you know kind of thing, right? Nothing's broken here. It's just that user experience shock of like, oh, I didn't know I could set this value. And so the default behavior is it's going to just greedily grab as many threads as kind of PyTorch out of the box uses, which isn't wrong. I just didn't know if we wanted to, like, you know, consider a...
You have got a point, which is that we aren't going to include this environment variable because we don't set limits on our default examples, right? So
right.
This would be something that, like, obviously, but yet we could include it if we had the weird, like, extraction tool like we did up here. But then there is the problem, which is that I just don't think we can make... I first off think it's a bit crazy to allow, well, actually we already do for some things, but to allow an extraction function that's, because it's also not strictly that we should follow the limit. Like, that's not actually necessarily what the admin would want. Like, it might, there might be other reasons for that. Also, you can, there is something to be said that also you don't necessarily want to set it in all cases because the, it just might work faster. Things like this are complicated. It's more like this is something that needs to be there for these options almost certainly, because there is an obvious need for, sometimes you want an environment, like for even something basic, like maybe you can imagine like GPU related configs in environment variables you'd want to set if you set a specific thing. Anyway, I'll stop the recording for now. We can keep chatting for a minute or two, but thanks for coming, everyone. See you next week.